2023, undoubtedly one of the best years in gaming in a long time. It was especially a good year for AAA gaming, but there is one problem here. There are almost no new IPs. Well, we've got a few ones, like Bethesda's 20 years in development Starfield, the greatly written Forspoken,
Oh, that's too far.
and Arkane's bestseller Redfall. Okay, jokes aside, but really, there is no single successful new IP in AAA gaming. We can sort of include here Lies of P or Hogwarts Legacy, but even these two games are based on established worlds. What about new worlds? Why are we not getting any new worlds this console generation? I don't want to say that I'm not happy with many of these games. Many of them are great, and Baldur's Gate 3 probably is one of my favorite games ever, but wouldn't it be great and exciting to get something completely new? It feels like the game industry is afraid to make new games. It's an odd statement, but it seems to be true. Was it always like that? The term originated in 1990s when game retailers were trying to hype up upcoming titles. Most likely, the term was borrowed from the world of finances. In bond trading, AAA represents the safest investment opportunity. Similar to an investment, retailers were advertising games as AAA as a safe pre-order before the game releases. If the game is AAA, then most likely it will be an amazing game. Of course, we all know that retailers and publishers will never lie to us, right? So what differentiates a AAA game from a usual game?
I require gold!
Big budget. Nowadays, these games have an average budget of over $200 million. And that's not the limit, as there is a trend of rising cost in game development. Large teams. Usually it's a couple hundred of people. For example, Elden Ring had over 300 developers, Baldur's Gate 3 over 450, which is another issue when comparing how games used to be developed back then, when teams usually were fewer than 100. Long game development. AAA games used to take 1 to a maximum of 3 years of development. Nowadays it takes 5+ years to develop a game. Most likely, the first game to be considered a AAA scale of production was Final Fantasy VII in 1997. The budget estimate was $40 to $45 million, making it the most expensive game ever made at that point. At that time, the average budget of a high-profile game was around $1.5 to $2.5 million, and that was considered to be a big budget for a game. It featured a movie-like presentation and hadn't been seen before, with an unparalleled amount of high-quality cinematics, for 1997, orchestral music, and the use of camera work in a movie-like fashion. Final Fantasy VII set a new standard for gaming. During development, between 100 to 150 people were involved, and the game was completed within a year. To truly grasp the scale of Final Fantasy VII, it's essential to understand that most game studios at that time had teams of around 20 developers. Even highly anticipated games, Quake 2 had only about 20 developers, while the original Tomb Raider from 1996 had a core team of just 6 developers. Sony and Square Enix went all in on Final Fantasy VII, and their big gamble paid off. Final Fantasy VII sold over 10 million copies, with revenue reaching $690 million. We're still getting Final Fantasy VII games. Square Enix has planned at least 3 remakes of Final Fantasy VII. One game split into 3 remakes, and consumers are buying it all over again. And that's not it. On top of all, Final Fantasy VII was a big PlayStation exclusive, which meant just one thing. The success of Final Fantasy VII changed the game industry. Sony successfully entered the console market, which was previously dominated by Sega and Nintendo, and pushed them off from the pedestal where they used to be. By the end of the 5th generation of consoles, Sony had sold 100 million units, making it one of the best-selling consoles of all time.
It's about the future of video games.
More studios and publishers inspired by Sony's and Square Enix success began to venture into the AAA space. In the 6th generation, budgets increased 10 times, averaging between $15 to $50 million per game. The rise in budget and production time seemed justified by the returns. Or again, the big PlayStation exclusive, Final Fantasy X. It was once again a huge success for Square Enix and Sony, a game made by a team of 100 developers with a budget of $32 million, with an incredible revenue of $750 million. Not counting its sequels and remasters, it demonstrated the profitability of AAA game development. With such promising margins, AAA game development became an attractive prospect, leading to the development of many new and exciting franchises that, surprisingly, we're still playing them towards these days. I count at least 16 completely new IPs that received favorable reviews from Metacritic with scores averaging around 80% or higher. During the era of Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, Sony faced stiff competition from Microsoft. This competition drove up AAA development costs, with both manufacturers trying to outperform each other by demonstrating whose console was more powerful. They began to produce games that were larger and more complex. These games were designed to showcase the capabilities of their hardware, as well as pushing the medium overall, introducing cinematic games, as well as larger open-world games. And the third-party publishers were also raising their stakes in the game. While the majority of AAA games in that generation had budgets ranging from $20 to $50 million, one game exceeded this amount significantly.
So this is what the dream feels like.
GTA 4 was the most expensive game of its time, with the budget exceeding $100 million in development and marketing costs. It was the first game to make $1 billion in revenue. Skyrim came around that time, a game that is still selling today. I think we have already 2-3 remasters of that, an anniversary edition that just came out a year or two ago, and the number of new AAA IPs was bigger than ever. I counted at least 30 successful new IPs during this console generation. This is when franchises like Dark Souls, BioShock and Mass Effect were born. It was a great time to play games. During the 8th generation of consoles, the signs of escalating game budgets began to become more apparent. PlayStation's The Last of Us Part 2 had a budget of $220 million, with the revenue hitting around $447 million. While still profitable, there was a noticeable shrinking margin for most of games. Despite the substantial investment, the returns didn't really match the expectations. Even when considering game development time, Sony's flagship studio Naughty Dog managed to deliver 3 Uncharted games and The Last of Us within one console generation. However, during this one, they released only 2 games, The Last of Us Part 2 and Uncharted 4. How things are going, it means that there will be fewer games, higher investments, and smaller margins overall. Just to compare to the previous generations, I count around 17 new IPs developed during this time with an average score of 80% on Metacritic.
We already turned on each other like it's 4th of July.
Almost 50% less new successful new IPs than on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. It's 2023, it's been a fantastic year for gaming, with a lot of amazing titles being released. However, something's starting to change.
Microsoft fired almost 2,000 people.
But it's an industry that didn't really grow.
Sony has announced a significant round of layoffs affecting around 900 staff members.
Percentage of it will quit this industry for good, and they're just fed up with it.
This sucks.
2024, thousands of layoffs across the whole game industry. Big publishers like Sony and Microsoft don't seem as confident about the AAA gaming industry anymore. Just consider Spider-Man 2, with a budget of $300 million. It costed 3 times more developed than the first game, and it sold around 10 million copies, which is around an estimate of $700 million. But is the revenue worth the 3-fold increase in costs? It seems like margins are getting smaller and smaller each generation, while the costs are getting higher and the risk of a flop can actually ruin a studio. To compare with previous generation, there have been only 5 new AAA games that are new IPs and received over an 80% Metacritic score. The rising cost of AAA budgets are a long-term problem that doesn't have a quick fix. I remember back when I was a student, the instructor asked the class, imagine you have a chance to sell $1 million idea to Microsoft. How would you approach it? The class started to pitch their thoughts and ideas until the instructor replied to us as if it was Microsoft receiving the pitch. We're not interested in the idea that will bring just $1 million. It's too small for us. We're looking for projects that will bring us billions. Okay, that's bold. And I don't think that's due to pure greed, but it mostly has to be related to how bloated these corporations are. Considering their size, they can't allow themselves to create small projects while maintaining big teams. The bigger the team, the less risk they can afford. Just imagine how hard it should be to exchange ideas with a team of 200 people. How much easier will be to exchange ideas in a creative team of 20 people rather than 200. And how will it work with 200? It will have go through many revisions, consultations, opinions from the marketing team, opinions from the upper management, and so on. With such a huge production size, it is completely natural for a groundbreaking narrative to be shaped into a predictable and well-measured blockbuster-like story without any rough edges. At how much it costs these corporations to produce a game, taking a risk on unknown IP is just not worth it. What will be easier to justify? Making a new unknown world, or make another Call of Duty or 6 more Assassin's Creeds, perhaps a few more of remakes? They know how to make it, it's easy to market it, they can sell merch immediately even before starting a game, perhaps make a TV show in between. Why risk developing something new? New is scary and risky.
Well, you ain't getting anywhere without an upgrade.
The last new IP with a high budget was Cyberpunk 2077, and it was a huge gamble for CD Projekt. It was a massive risk with a budget of over 423 million. It had a disastrous launch. I remember back in 2021 there were even talks that the whole studio might go down. And if you look at CD Projekt's, the creators of Witcher roadmap, it doesn't seem like they're planning to take such a risk anytime soon.
Today, we have two amazing, powerful franchises, The Witcher and Cyberpunk.
They announced many games in the Witcher universe, including a remake as well as a sequel to Cyberpunk. Even Ubisoft, they decided to scrap almost all their other projects and double down on Assassin's Creed.
I'm just trying to fit in.
Something similar happened with Rockstar. They used to develop different great games like Bully or LA Noire, but for a while we haven't heard nothing about these titles anymore. Since GTA 5's success, these titles became too small for them.
You're gonna rip people off and get paid for it. It's called capitalism.
And looking how the AAA industry is growing, it's actually quite sad. It seems that many of the studios could have something great in the works, but I guess the chase of the bigger will lead them forever to produce sequels and re-releases till the end of time. And worst of all, most likely we'll be okay with that. AAA game development, by its nature, has pushed everyone to create bigger games, whether in scope or production quality. There are two main approaches. First, open world. Create a game of massive size where players can spend hundreds of hours exploring. It's a great concept, however the big studios and publishers been really overdoing it. Let's say if you play one of them, you have an idea how it will go. Usually, endless question marks on the map with almost copy-paste content. Instant gratification, endless loot. It feels that the majority of developers are so afraid of challenging the player that they don't leave any mystery in the game. And I'm not talking yet about them using generative AI.
Over 1,000 planets, all open for you to explore.
Instead of creating handcrafted experiences with carefully placed items and interesting secrets that fulfill and reward the sense of discover, most of the open world games are just a predictable and bland time sink. And quite often they might even add life quality improvements with microtransactions to let the pay real money to skip the boring and repetitive content. Movie type games. This approach focuses on delivering a cinematic experience. It used to be great, really, I used to love great cinematic and emotional stories. But with time, whenever I play a new highly driven cinematic story, I can't stop catching myself on the thought that the game is hand-holding me way too much. The balance between playing and watching has shifted heavily towards watching. There is just not much player input in the plot, sometimes I even feel that it would work better without any gameplay. I could just watch it like a movie. It seems that the big studios and publishers are going into two extremes. One extreme, they want to create blockbuster movies that pretend to be games, and in the other extreme, they want to create the never-ending open worlds.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help.
No! God, please, no!
And what about the insane amount of sequels and never-ending stories? Sorry, but I just don't think it's cool that Insomniac will keep making Spider-Man games forever, or that God of War is still ongoing. Yes, I know it's great, but I think Kratos' story deserves an end, and it had a fitting end in the original trilogy. Or Master Chief, why didn't he retire in peace after saving the world in the third game? It had a perfect ending. Why did they pull Marcus Phoenix out of retirement? He already beat the Locust, let the guy rest. Great stories must have an end.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I often like to think that the game industry and the film industry are interconnected in some way. I have noticed an interesting parallel between big blockbuster Hollywood movies and the game industry. Whatever happens in the film industry at some point will happen with the game industry. Superheroes? Check. Subscription? Check. Remakes and endless sequels? Check. Remember when Disney bought Lucasfilm and then acquired 21st Century Fox for $71 billion? In the last few years, both Sony and Microsoft have been acquiring game studios and publishers.
This will be the largest acquisition in our history.
Tencent and Embracer Group have also been active in acquiring as many studios as possible. For over a decade, they've been releasing so many superhero movies and TV shows, and it looks like the viewers have finally got tired of it. A similar process might happen with the game industry. How long will it take for players to get tired of Spider-Man games? 3 more? 5? 6? What about God of War? Horizon Zero Dawn? How much more sequels do we need? Gears of War 6? Halo Infinite 10 and beyond? Perhaps another Star Wars game? You get the idea. I think Xbox is already facing this fatigue with Gears of War and Halo series since the last generation. And what about remakes? How many more remakes of older games do we need before we get tired of them? It's crazy to think that the most highly rated games for the last 2 years are remakes of older games. Worst of all, those remakes are great and they seem to be better than new games. Due to how AAA games now take over 6 years to develop, what will be the long-term impact on the game industry? Are we going to be stuck with games riddled with microtransactions and live service games, while single-player games receive fewer and fewer releases? Or is the mobile gaming the big secret plan for the traditional publishers to grow their business? They keep on telling us that mobile is the future. Despite the challenges, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. If we look once again at the film industry, there is a similar crisis. Disney Productions, which used to have a safely curated production overseen by many analytics and marketing teams, are not delivering the revenue that studios want. The audience wants to see something new. And that's a great thing. Consumers have voted by not going to the movies anymore. It took almost a decade for big blockbusters made by directors with a unique perspective. When you look at recent movies like Oppenheimer and Dune, you see the director's name attached to them. You can't separate these movies from their creators.
And the game of the year is Baldur's Gate 3.
Similarly, we're seeing this trend in games. Baldur's Gate 3, taking 2023 by storm, is heavily associated with the vision of its creator, Sven Vincke. Alan Wake 2, we all associated with Sam Lake that is behind this strange world. Elden Ring from Miyazaki, the man behind the Souls games, the design that everyone is still trying to crack it, but only him can make those games great. These game directors can be called video game authors, creators with a strong vision of how the game should be, akin to great film directors who push the medium forward, striving to create new and unique experiences as they envision them. I strongly believe that a game designed to be a game for all is a game for none. At the end of the day, video games are a form of art, and rarely does art made by managers and marketing teams can stand the test of time. I hope we will see more unique projects made by visionaries instead of marketing teams. I understand the justification by big publishers that games are very expensive to make. There must be a reason why. Different people, lack of original talent, bloated production, or perhaps increasingly sophisticated tech. I don't know the exact answer, but I do know one thing for sure. Something is broken. As a player, I keep wondering why most of these AAA productions come out in such a rough state. Why do most of sequels and new games have such a huge quality drop in comparison to older titles, sometimes even visually appearing worse than older games? If we stop buying so many sequels and remakes, perhaps publishers will realize that consumers want new experiences. Maybe they'll stop manipulating us knowing that we're nostalgic about older franchises and they'll try to focus on something new. Who knows, maybe sooner rather than later we'll get a new world that gives us many great new memories, and that might happen soon, unless